Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, we're going to talk about when avoidants inwardly decide that you're the one. And I think some folks misinterpret this stage, which is why we're talking about it. For male avoidance, this stage typically takes a little less time than female avoidance. And as you guys know, if there's anything specific about gender or dismissive versus fearful, I usually mention it, but that's why I brought that up. Male avoidance this stage is a little bit less, and then for females it takes a little bit more time. But what I also notice is female avoidance, their mind can be changed a little bit easier because the time is longer. So let's say they're deciding if you're the one for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. During that time, you can make mistakes to some extent. Mistakes sound silly, but whatever. You can communicate in a certain way and then you can readjust and fix that, and then they can change their mind because the time is longer. Whereas male avoidance, that time is like a lot shorter. Like sometimes it's like a couple months. I feel like for my significant other, it was like a day, but I don't know. It really felt like that. Like for me, it took a while. Like genuinely, it took a couple years for me to really, really know. For him, it did not. It just didn't. And that we could be very like dynamic in that way, but I have noticed that male avoidance take just less time to know that you're the person they want versus if they don't want you. Females, it's kind of lukewarm for a pretty long time, and then they really decide or they don't decide. And so take that as you will, but it's just something to keep in mind. Okay. Usually what it looks like is they're a little bit more distant. Sometimes, not all the time. This could even be for like a couple hours. Some male avoidance, they don't really need that much time at all, but you're going to see them be a little bit distant, not by much, and it's going to be less focused on physical intimacy. And that is what I think is the most important part. In the beginning of relationships, regardless of attachment style, it's a little bit more physical. That's just usually how it goes. And then you see that dip where the physical intimacy decreases, sometimes to the point where there is no more physical intimacy. And this is the part that people get really confused about, and I'm going to explain it. In the beginning, avoidants are comfortable with physical intimacy because they're not attaching it to their own emotions. And sometimes they do it because they think they have to, or they feel like that's part of the courting phase. And so they're just putting on a front, not because they're lying to you, but because they are forcing expectations onto themselves because of their own insecurities. And so when they actually care about you, this goes away, and the true version of their physical intimacy starts showing up, which is actually really vulnerable. A lot of avoidants think of physical intimacy as a very vulnerable and uncomfortable situation. And actually, a lot of them can be very giving if they really open up about how they feel about physical intimacy in the bedroom. Sorry, I don't know if I was clear about that. I'm talking about like bedroom intimacy more particularly, but also physical intimacy like kissing and hugging. And so what happens is that intimacy can be much less frequent because they're afraid to show you their true version of themselves, which is maybe it's really hard for them to get comfortable, or maybe female avoidant, there might be pain involved, right? And they're afraid to tell you that and show you that maybe they do struggle to feel safe and comfortable in those situations, right? And so when they start deciding that you're the person for them, it's less focused on that. And what happens is they start being more focused on their true self, which unfortunately means more maladaptive strategies sometimes. So you might see how often they work, right? Maybe at first you weren't realizing that they're kind of like a workaholic type of thing, right? They isolate themselves often. Maybe they struggle with drinking or eating disorders. And by the way, this is for informational purposes. I'm not saying for anyone to do any of these things. I'm not promoting these things. This is just informational purposes. But you start seeing those true parts of themselves. But often, more commonly with male avoidance, if you ask them, like, are you serious about me, or am I the person you want? Do you have any doubts about me? They're probably going to say no when they're in this stage. And this is really important because when they're able to clearly say that this is how they feel, usually that, even if their behaviors don't seem like it, if they're able to say, no, I have no doubts about you, that makes a really big difference. So that's what I was talking about with my relationship. He didn't have doubts about me pretty much right away, but I had doubts for a while. I'm honest about that, and he knows that. I had doubts for probably a couple years, and then for him, I think he didn't really have any doubts. And part of it was, I think he was very specific about what he wanted in a relationship. I was not. I was not specific at all. I had no clue what I really wanted. My attachment issues were probably more extreme. And so things that triggered me, I didn't really understand why I was feeling a certain way. I had awareness of it prior to this relationship, but I just didn't I still had to face a lot of things I never faced before. And it was interesting and challenging for me. And I did heal those things, but I think that he just really knew what he wanted more than I did. And that I don't know if that's just because of an age difference. We have an age difference, but that was just something I wanted to share. And so what are avoidants assessing when they're deciding if you're the one, okay? They're trying to see, is your lifestyle compatible to theirs? Okay, so this is something that I did notice about myself, and it's really important for a lot of avoidants. A lot of them, I work with them. This one is really important. I'm a person who wakes up early, okay? I wake up early, like 6 a.m., 7 a.m. naturally, and I also work pretty early because some couples, they want to be seen earlier than 8, just because that's the time they're together. So 7 a.m., I have sessions at 7 a.m., which I have no issue with. I don't care at all. I actually love that. And I'm really specific about these things. I personally cannot imagine being with someone who wakes up at like noon or wants to sleep in or prefers a later work schedule and they come home at like 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. I do not like that. I don't like that at all. I cannot stand that, to be honest. And there's nothing against that. I'm not saying that for you, but I am a person that I can't do that because before I work, I like to exercise a little bit. I like to shower. I like to do certain things. And those things are built in how I feel about the day. And if a person is not like that, I can't see myself long term. And the interesting part is my significant other has almost the exact same schedule, but we didn't do it. We didn't make that schedule together. He was like that by himself before me, and I was like that by myself before him. And then it happened to work really well. And so I think that could be why our lives, it was just easier to get into a relationship with each other. The next one is you manage some disappointments in the relationship without breaking up. They want to see, can you manage things in the relationship without ultimatums or without freaking out or without crashing out or without making a huge scene about it. And I'm sorry, I know people don't like that word, but I'm just trying to explain that, right? And so let's say they haven't texted you back. Instead of you, like, I don't know, punishing them and not texting them or proving a point or talking about it for like, I don't know, multiple times without telling them exactly what you want, you can manage your disappointment. Nobody is the exact same person. They might not be bothered at all if you don't text them for 5 weeks, if it's a very severe case, right? But you're going to be bothered by it. Tell them that because they don't know, because they only know themselves. And so can you manage disappointment without making it such a huge deal or breaking up or causing such confusion? Can you have that conflict resolution? The next one is, can you communicate what you want instead of using indirect means? Example, the silent treatment. Can you ask them for exactly what you want without beating around the bush, and can you say it clear? Because anxious people, I don't know if fearful avoidants do this. Some fearful avoidants do, but the way anxious people do it, anxious attached folks, you guys tiptoe around their triggers because there's a part of you that's afraid that if you trigger them, they're going to break up with you. Fearful avoidance, what you guys do is you tiptoe around the triggers, sometimes because you resent them and you're almost checking out of the relationship. And so you're just tiptoeing around triggers because you just don't want to deal with their reaction. So they're two different things. And the fearful avoidant one, that usually doesn't happen right away. It usually happens after years of being with someone who you're disappointed with. Anxious people, you do that almost like maybe after 6 months or a year. And so the main point I'm trying to say is just when you're communicating indirectly, if you still want something from them, then you need to communicate directly. Because I know with fearful avoidance, sometimes you want something, but you've kind of given up, which is why you start communicating indirectly. You actually are not you've given up. And so you actually are not wanting anything anymore. So that's a little bit different, but that relationship you still probably need to communicate directly if you want to stay with them. But in general, if you want something from them, communicate directly. The next one is, can you acknowledge their efforts? Avoidants want to see this one. Then one after that, can they give you some of the things that you're asking for? This one is very significant, very significant. One of the most significant ones on this list. Can they give you the things that you are asking for? Now, have you ever heard an avoidant say, I can't give you what you need? This is where this is coming from. They have decided. They've been quietly deciding and checking, can they give you what you need? And they've decided, I don't think I can give you what you need. And that's why they say that. Can you turn it around and say, I can readjust what I'm asking for? Yes. I'm not saying you should do that, but if you do that, you can readjust it. But you have to actually be willing to let that go. Otherwise, the relationship is just not worth having. So can they give you some of the things that you're asking for? Because it's important. Because if they feel like they can't, they know the relationship is just a waste of time for both of you guys. The next one is, can they compromise? Do they have the desire and will to compromise? And this is really important. My significant other was somebody who did not compromise very well, but he mentioned that when we got together, there was a reason he wanted to compromise, because he did feel like we were very compatible and that the relationship was really worth staying in. And so he started compromising pretty much right away. And there were moments where I was annoyed because I still felt like he didn't compromise as much as I wanted sometimes. And I struggled with compromise as well, but just in different areas. And he would always tell me that in the very beginning of our relationship that like he always struggled with compromising, and he has never compromised the amount that he's compromised with me. And I've never seen him like that. And I never have. I've never seen him the way other people have seen him, like completely rigid, uncompromising, not communicating. I've never seen him like that, because as soon as we got together, he didn't want to do that anymore. And he put a lot of effort to not be that person. And part of it is probably because I would communicate I didn't like certain things right away, and then he would just have that opportunity to prove to me and change it pretty much right away. I wasn't saying change these things. I just said I didn't like them. Like I didn't, and I would say like sometimes he would talk like a little bit more confusing to me, and I would say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you just say it again? And like I would always communicate those things. And so for him, I think he wanted to know if he can compromise in a relationship and he can give me what I want. And I think that made it so much easier. And then he was able to do those things pretty much right away. The next one is, can they keep their promises to you? This one's really important. This one is something that I really made sure of. I used to be a person, and now I'm not like this anymore. And please remember that I was young when we got into our relationship with him, but just before him and in general, with even friends, my family, whatever, I would say I'm going to do something without my heart was not fully in it, because I just didn't want them mad, and I just wanted them to stop talking, which I know is really mean, and I'm just being honest. I was young, and I'm ashamed that I was like that. And so when I was in a relationship with him, the main thing I really, really wanted to make sure is, can I promise that I'm going to do something, and can I keep it? Because there was things in the beginning that he was like, this needs to change. Like, I'm getting confused. Why do you do this? One of the big ones in the beginning of our relationship was like, when he would like be physically affectionate, I would like kind of pull away physically. And he thought I was like repulsed by him. I was not. I wasn't good with like hugging. I wasn't good with that, actually. Now I am. But like that really confused him and triggered him and bothered him. And that was one of the first things that I had to work on, because it bothered him and hurt his feelings, right? And I did not promise and say, I'm going to fix this tomorrow. I didn't. When I was younger, I would say, I promise I'm going to fix this. Just trust me, right? When actually, in actuality, I wasn't even sure how I was going to do it. So with him, I was like, I wouldn't say I'm going to fix it. I promise, not at first, until I was ready, until I was able to say, okay, I am going to fix this. What I would say at first is, okay, I hear you. I'm listening. I'm going to work on it. I just want you to give me time. That's what I first said. And then when I felt a little bit more confident, I'd said, I promise this is going to change. And it did. It did. And that was actually one of the first things I worked on. And I'm proud of myself for that. But that was one thing that if I wasn't able to feel that I can say that to him without him reacting, or without me feeling like I can give him this, I probably wouldn't have been in that relationship. And so let's talk about what they're assessing. We're going to summarize it, and then we're going to wrap it up, okay? They want to make sure that you guys are compatible with lifestyle, okay? They want to make sure that you can manage disappointment without breaking up with them. They want to make sure you can communicate directly. They want to feel like you can acknowledge what their efforts are. They want to feel like they can give you what you're asking for. They want to know, can they compromise? And they want to know, can they keep their promises? So I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.